It's amazing how in the last week or so I've had a couple organizations and businesses reach out to me about conflict they're having in the workplace. And as I tell everybody, the good news and the bad news is there's conflict everywhere. But the bad news is not every business does anything to take care of it. So that's why I wanted to do this video on employee conflicts and how you can really take care and what are some of the common mistakes, the four common mistakes that we fail to identify and fail to do anything about. So let's take a look. Let's see what we got to talk about today with employee conflicts. There are four common mistakes to avoid. Now, if you look at this picture, you don't really see employee conflict here necessarily. But maybe you see good conflict because there is constructive conflict and there's destructive conflict. In order to eliminate conflict, the basic tenet is to have trust. And trust is something maybe we'll talk about in a different video on how to develop that. And I'll share a few nuggets today. So let's take a look at what are some of the key points we're going to talk about when we look at these mistakes. So mistakes are avoiding the conflict, taking sides, being too lenient or too strict, and failing to follow through. All right, so let's dive into each of these in a little bit more detail. So first of all, avoiding the conflict. Well, acknowledge that the issue is there. I mean, I'll tell you what, I've been guilty of avoiding the conflict in my life. Excuse me. I've avoided conflict before. But if you acknowledge the issue itself, and maybe not the person, it'll be much easier to attack it. So don't let the conflict sit there. Don't avoid the conflict. Acknowledge the issue. Encourage open dialogue. If somebody brings conflict to you and you throw something right back at them, well, what is that going to, how's that going to make that person feel? So encourage open dialogue. Sit back, arms open, legs open, eyes on the person speaking, phone in your desk drawer, and encourage some open dialogue about the issue, about the conflict. Set ground rules, particularly in a group meeting. You know, how are we gonna act? And there's something called speak your piece, something I teach a lot about in workshops on how to communicate better as an organization. And essentially what it is some ground rules for speaking with in one-on-one meetings, in team meetings and organizational meetings. And some people use it in their families or their organizations, their church group, whatever the case might be. It's a great piece. And follow up, okay? Just because you've talked about the conflict and you say, oh yeah, it's okay, make sure you follow up. And actually, that's one of the four mistakes that we often don't make. Taking sides, do not take sides in a conflict. I think you know that. I hope you know that. You have to listen impartially. Even if you have a better relationship with one person or the other, you can't take sides and you have to really be impartial and listen to both sides of the conflict if they can't handle themselves. Gather the facts. Don't let them bring in innuendo, rumor, gossip. Just, gather the facts. Let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about the important things. Don't let the conversation get distracted by something that is totally unrelated. Focus on issues, not people. Again, right? Maybe you have a different relationship with a person, but what's the issue at hand and how is it impacting the workplace moving forward? And use a fair process. Again, making sure you're impartial, you gather facts, all those sorts of things. Make sure that the process you're using to resolve the conflict is one that's a fair process. It's never going to please everybody. And if you can get everybody at 80% of agreement, I think you're in a really good place. All right. I talk about that a lot when we're looking at problem solving and strategic planning and getting people to agree on things. 80% isn't too bad of a percentage. That's a B. That's a good B. Oh, let's take a commercial break. Get that complimentary leadership guide. Give you some free information. Love sharing about leadership and culture, so I hope you'll take advantage of it. You can click on the QR code, or you can go to www.toddkukan.com/guide. Say that 3 times fast. All right, next one, number 3, being too lenient or too strict, right? Think about it if you have children or if you have a dog, a pet, right? Being too lenient or being too strict. Set clear expectations with yourself, with your teammates, with your coworkers, with the people that work with you and for you and that you report to. And, doesn't hurt to do that at home too. Set really clear expectations about where you're going. What are the priorities? What are the habits? What are the goals? Be consistent. Be consistent. Nothing hurts a workplace more than people who are all over the map in terms of leniency. And sometimes if you've been too lenient for long, you have to make that jump back to being too strict. And it breaks consistency, but it's certainly going to help your organization and your relationships if you get back to being consistent and being fair. And again, you have to balance empathy with authority. You have to be a willing listener, but you also, if you're a leader, you also have to be in charge. And sometimes you have to make those decisions that maybe aren't, the most popular ones. But again, it's not about popularity. It's about balancing empathy with authority. And then finally, provide guidance and support along the way. Help people. Somebody is probably going to be more disappointed about the way the conflict was resolved than somebody else. Help both people. Provide guidance and support for both people. Figure out ways to make it a win for everybody. Failing to follow through, another mistake, common mistake with employee conflicts. Sometimes you have to document the resolution. I always say, like after a staff meeting, document what's been accomplished in that particular meeting, so there's clarity on it. Maybe you heard something wrong, or the note taker for that meeting heard something wrong. Same thing in a conflict. Make sure you document the resolution. And even it might be even as extreme as changing your policies and procedures, changing your standing operating procedures. Hopefully you have those for your organization, but it could be to that level too. But make sure you're documenting. Set deadlines, smart goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Make sure you set deadlines for different things, how you want to accomplish them. Keep monitoring progress along the way. Sometimes you have to change those deadlines, those goals, and that's fine. Go ahead and do that, but at least do it intentionally. Don't do it randomly or for no reason, for being forgetful. And throughout the whole process, make sure you're providing feedback, because that's going to help you and your team through that conflict, and it's going to help you with conflicts in the future. So 4 common mistakes here, and there are others, but these are some of the key ones. Help your team battle through those. You will have conflicts, but if you have good communication and build that trust, conflict is something that you'll welcome, you'll ask for, as long as it's constructive. So again, make sure you tap on that QR code to get this fantastic ebook, 7 Deadly Mistakes each great leader avoids. And most of all, thank you and have a great day.